Research Station Beta 9 stands as a testament to interstellar cooperation, perched on the crystalline plains of Nexus Prime, where the gravity barely reaches 0.3 standard Earth units. I, Professor Klix Vondara, Chief Xenobiologist of the Galactic Science Coalition, never expected my perfectly organized research facility to become the center of what we now call the Great Tremor Incident. "Professor Vondara, the human researcher has arrived," my assistant Blip announced through the communication panel, their voice vibrating with nervous energy. Their transport pod just touched down on landing pad 3. I straightened my sensory appendages and adjusted my ceremonial science robe. First impressions matter, especially when dealing with a Deathworlder. "Very well, Blip. Let's greet our new colleague with appropriate protocol." The human, Marcus Rodriguez, emerged from the transport pod like a warrior from ancient legends. 6 feet 2 inches of solid muscle mass, wrapped in what he called casual attire. My 3 hearts skipped several beats. No amount of xenobiology research could have prepared me for the sheer presence of a human in person. "Professor Vondara, thanks for having me," Marcus said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting gesture. "I hope my higher mass won't cause any structural issues for the station." I reached out with my primary appendage, trying not to tremble. "Welcome to Beta 9, Mr. Rodriguez. Your mass calculations have been fully compensated for in our structural design." I forced a professional laugh through my respiratory channels. Though I must admit, seeing a Deathworlder in person is quite different from studying the data files. Our facility quickly adapted to Marcus's presence. The research staff, initially skittish around him, gradually became fascinated by his daily routines. He installed what he called a modest home gym in his quarters, modified for the lower gravity. The rhythmic clanking of his exercise equipment became a strange comfort, like a mechanical heartbeat within our station. "Fascinating," my colleague Dr. Neat would say, watching Marcus casually lift equipment that would require our cargo loader to move. "Their species exercises voluntarily, even when not in their natural gravity, for fun." Our research into planetary crystalline formations continued smoothly. Marcus proved to be an exceptional geologist, his Deathworlder strength allowing him to collect samples that would have required specialized equipment for our species. Everything seemed perfect, peaceful, productive. If only we had studied human physiology more thoroughly. If only we had known about the phenomenon they call muscle cramps. But hindsight, as humans say, is always 20/20ths, whatever that means. The real excitement hadn't even begun. For now, Research Station Beta 9 hummed along, blissfully unaware that it was about to become the setting for one of the most ridiculous misunderstandings in Galactic Science Coalition history. The day started like any other on Research Station Beta 9. Our atmospheric processors hummed their usual melody, crystal samples sparkled in their containment units, and Marcus was in his quarters doing what he called his morning workout routine. "Professor Vondara," Blip called out, their voice carrying that slight warble of concern. "Our seismic monitors are picking up some unusual vibrations from Section C. They seem to be synchronized with Mr. Rodriguez's exercise patterns." "Normal readings for a Deathworlder, Blip," I assured them, waving my sensory appendage dismissively. "Remember the incident last week when we thought we had a containment breach? It was just Marcus doing something called burpees." The morning progressed into our standard research schedule. Marcus joined us in the primary lab, analyzing our latest crystal formations. However, something seemed off about his movements. His usual fluid grace appeared stilted, and his face occasionally contorted in what I now know was discomfort. "You okay there, big guy?" Dr. Neat asked, using the human colloquialism they had picked up. "Your locomotion appears irregular by 23.7% compared to your baseline." Marcus stretched his lower appendages, what humans call legs, and forced a smile. "Just pushed a bit hard at the gym. Been a while since I did heavy squats in low grav. Nothing to worry about." Our sensitive equipment picked up the first minor tremor at precisely 14:32 station time. A slight vibration, barely registering on our instruments, but enough to make the crystal samples dance in their containment units. Seismic activity, Dr. Neat suggested, their optical sensors widening with scientific curiosity. Impossible, I replied, checking the readings. Nexus Prime hasn't shown tectonic activity in over 3 million cycles. These readings must be incorrect. The second tremor came 17 minutes later, stronger than the first. This time, Marcus was walking past our primary research terminal, and I noticed him grabbing his leg with considerable force. Probability of equipment malfunction, 0.003%, Blip announced, their analytical processors whirring. Readings suggest localized disturbances, epicenter moving through the station. Our research staff began exchanging worried glances. Well, as much as beings with compound eyes, sensory stalks and optical clusters can exchange glances. The tension in the air was thick enough that even our atmospheric processors seemed to struggle with it. Perhaps we should conduct a structural integrity scan, suggested junior researcher Zorn, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with anxiety. These readings aren't matching any known patterns in our database. Marcus had moved to the station's recreation area, but the tremors continued. Our monitoring equipment registered increasingly concerning spikes. What truly worried me was how they seemed to follow his movement pattern through the station. "Professor," Blip whispered, their voice modulator barely audible. "I've been monitoring Mr. Rodriguez's vital signs through the station's biosensors. They're showing irregular patterns." I watched our human colleague through the observation panels. His movements had become increasingly erratic, and he appeared to be communicating with his lower limb in what humans call cursing. "Should we contact Galactic Emergency Services?" Dr. Neat asked, their usually steady appendages trembling slightly. "What if the human's presence has somehow destabilized the planet's crystal structure?" Before I could respond, our entire sensor array erupted in a symphony of alerts. The readings were off the charts, and they all pointed to one location: the corridor outside the main laboratory, where Marcus had just stopped walking. The look on his face, I'll never forget it. Humans have such expressive features, and his was contorting in what we would soon learn was not planetary destruction, but something far more mundane, and yet somehow more terrifying. Little did we know, we were about to witness firsthand why Deathworlders were both fascinating and frightening, even when they weren't trying to be. The next 15 minutes of chaos at Research Station Beta 9 would later become required viewing in every Galactic Science Coalition training program, filed under Xenobiological Misunderstandings, a case study in overreaction. It started with a sound. Not the gentle rumble we'd been detecting, but a sharp grunt from Marcus that made my sensory appendages curl. He was standing in the main corridor, one hand pressed against the reinforced wall, the other clutching his right leg. The station's sensors exploded with activity. "Alert! Alert! Seismic disturbance exceeding safety parameters," the station's automated system blared. "Emergency protocols now in effect." "Sweet mother of crystalline formations," Dr. Neat shouted, their bioluminescent spots flashing panic patterns. "The readings are coming from exactly where the human is standing." Marcus dropped to the floor, his face contorted in what we assumed was mortal agony. His powerful frame curled into itself, and the tremors from his position began rattling nearby equipment. The sight of a Deathworlder, a being we'd watched casually lift enormous crystal samples, brought low by some invisible force, sent our staff into complete panic. "Initiate emergency evacuation," I ordered, my 3 hearts pounding so hard they nearly synchronized. "Priority 1 containment protocols. Move, move, move!" The evacuation was anything but orderly. Junior researcher Zorn got their tentacles tangled in the emergency kit straps. Dr. Neat, in their haste to reach the escape pods, forgot they could float and tried running on all 6 legs instead. Blip, bless their logical circuits, attempted to download the entire station's research data while scooting backward toward the exit. "Professor Vondara," Marcus called out between what seemed like spasms of agony. "Wait, it's not what you think." But what else could we think? Here was a Deathworlder, a being capable of surviving conditions that would liquidate most species, writhing on our station floor while our sensors recorded energy readings that shouldn't be possible. Clearly we were witnessing some kind of devastating evolutionary defense mechanism. "Warning! Warning!" The station's AI chimed in, its calm voice a stark contrast to the mayhem. "Unusual biometric readings detected, recommending immediate quarantine procedures." The security barriers started dropping, designed to contain potential biological threats. This, naturally, only added to the chaos. 3 research assistants got trapped in the crystal sample storage room. Dr. Neat somehow ended up sealed in a supply closet, their panicked bioluminescence visible through the translucent door. "Please," Marcus managed to say between grimaces, "it's just a Charlie horse." None of us knew what this Charlie horse was, but it sounded like a terrifying earthen beast. Had he somehow brought one aboard? Was it invisible? Was it contagious? "Containment field active in Sector 7, Blip announced, their vocabulator crackling with static. "But Professor, the humans' bio-readings are confusing. This doesn't match any known attack patterns in our database." I watched through the security field as Marcus rolled onto his back, his hands massaging his leg with surprising intensity. The station's sensors continued their frenzied reporting of localized energy spikes, all emanating from his position. "Begin emergency broadcast to Galactic Science Coalition headquarters," I commanded, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "Message priority ultraviolet. Subject, possible Deathworlder biological event in progress." The next few minutes were a blur of flashing emergency lights, blaring alarms, and the sounds of various species either running, floating, or oozing their way toward emergency exits. Through it all, Marcus remained on the floor, now mumbling something about "should have stretched properly" and "stupid low-gravity workouts." Then, as suddenly as it began, the readings started to normalize. Marcus's breathing steadied, and the tremors subsided. He sat up, looking simultaneously embarrassed and amused, an expression I didn't know humans could combine until that moment. "So," he said, rubbing his leg, "I guess now would be a bad time to explain what a muscle cramp is." I stood there, my primary appendages still hovering over the station's emergency controls, surrounded by toppled equipment and scattered research materials. Through the various containment barriers, I could see our staff in various states of panic and confusion. Dr. Neat had somehow managed to secrete enough stress-induced bioluminescent fluid to turn their supply closet into a disco light show. "Professor?" Blip's voice came through the comm system, slightly distorted. "Should I cancel the emergency broadcast to Coalition headquarters?" Before I could answer, a response already flashed on our screens. "Message received. Emergency response team en route. Estimated arrival, 47 minutes. Marcus looked at the message, then at me, then at his leg. "We should probably start explaining this before they arrive with a quarantine fleet, shouldn't we?" And that's how Research Station Beta 9 became the first facility in Galactic Science Coalition history to call off an emergency response team because of a human leg cramp. Though, to be fair, it was a rather impressive leg cramp. The emergency response team arrived in full biosecurity gear, looking like shimmering bubbles with appendages. Their leader, Chief Medical Officer Nova Brightscales, immediately began scanning Marcus with every device in their considerable arsenal. "So let me understand this correctly," Nova said, their scales shifting from emergency red to confused purple. "Your muscle tissue contracted involuntarily, causing localized pain intense enough to register on our seismic equipment, and this is normal." Marcus sat on the medical bay bed, now comfortably sipping what he called a sports drink, while connected to about 17 different monitoring devices. Well, normal might be stretching it, but yeah, muscle cramps happen. Usually when you overwork the muscle or don't hydrate properly. Low gravity probably didn't help. Dr. Neat, who had finally been coaxed out of their supply closet, was furiously taking notes. "Fascinating. The human body can generate enough force through involuntary muscle contraction to simulate a minor geological event. The energy readings were comparable to a level 3 crystal fracture." "Please stop looking so excited about my pain," Marcus chuckled, then winced as Nova pressed a sensor against his calf muscle. The medical team's analysis painted a picture that left us all feeling rather foolish. Humans, it turned out, possessed muscle fibers so dense and powerful that even their involuntary spasms could register on our sensitive equipment. The low-gravity environment, combined with Marcus's intensive workout, had created perfect conditions for what he called the mother of all Charlie horses. "Your muscle density is remarkable," Nova observed, their scales now shifting to scientific curiosity green. "The force generated by this cramp would have been sufficient to crush most species' exoskeletons. How do you survive in your own bodies?" "That's just the thing," Marcus explained, now actually enjoying being the center of attention. "Our bodies are built to handle way more stress than this. Back on Earth, people get leg cramps all the time. They complain about it for a few minutes, maybe walk it off, and go about their day." The revelation hit our research team like a gravitational wave. We had evacuated an entire research station, triggered emergency protocols, and nearly quarantined the whole facility because of something humans considered a minor inconvenience. "The emergency broadcast," I began, my sensory appendages drooping with embarrassment, "has already gone viral across 3 sectors, Blip helpfully informed us, their circuits practically buzzing with amusement. "They're calling it the Great Human Leg Crisis of 2374. Marcus tried to look sympathetic, but I could see him fighting back what humans call a grin. "Look at it this way, Professor Vondara. You've just contributed to the galaxy's understanding of human physiology. That's what science is all about, right?" Nova finished their final scans and began packing up their equipment. "I'll be updating the Galactic Medical Database with this information immediately, though I suggest we classify it under routine Deathworlder biological functions rather than planetary emergency protocols." Dr. Neat was still scribbling notes, but the energy readings, the localized tremors, the potential applications for studying crystal formation patterns. "No," I said firmly, all 3 of my hearts finally returning to their normal rhythm. "We are not studying human muscle cramps as a potential research tool." "But Professor—" "No!" Marcus stood up, stretching his now recovered leg. "Don't worry, Dr. Neat. I'm sure there will be plenty more opportunities to study human biological quirks. Just wait until someone gets the hiccups." The entire medical team froze. "The what?" I quickly ushered them out before they could ask any more questions. One xenobiological misunderstanding was quite enough for one day, though I couldn't help but notice Dr. Neat sneaking off to the database terminals, probably to look up these mysterious hiccups. Some days I wonder if the galaxy was really ready for humans. Then again, I suppose that's what makes science exciting. There's always something new to learn, even if it means occasionally evacuating a research station over a leg cramp. The weeks following the Great Human Leg Crisis brought significant changes to Research Station Beta 9. First, we had to revise our emergency protocols, which previously had no distinction between catastrophic geological event and human experiencing minor discomfort. Our new station manual now included a section titled Common Human Biological Phenomena, No Need for Panic, complete with helpful illustrations. The first entry read, "Muscle cramps, not actually an earthquake." "These revisions are quite extensive," Blip noted, scrolling through the updates. Did we really need to add, "Sneezing, not actually an explosive decompression event"? The arrival of our second human researcher, Dr. Linda Chen, tested our new protocols almost immediately. During her first week, she got something called brain freeze from drinking her cold beverage too quickly. Thanks to our updated guidelines, only 3 staff members hit the emergency evacuation button this time. "You're making progress," Marcus commented, as we watched Dr. Neat try to convince Linda to let them study her fascinating cranial temperature regulation system. Our station's AI required particular reprogramming. It had developed a nervous tic, activating containment fields whenever any human made sudden movements. This led to an embarrassing incident where Marcus got trapped in the bathroom for 2 hours after what he called a particularly spicy dinner. The sensors indicate rapid respiratory increase and unusual gastric activity, the AI had reported, refusing to release the containment field. Previous data suggests possible Deathworlder biological event in progress. It's called hiccups, Marcus had shouted through the barrier. We discussed this. The Galactic Science Coalition, in their infinite wisdom, used our experience to create new training programs. Now, every research station hosting human scientists received what they called the Deathworlder orientation package. The introduction video featured our security footage of the original leg cramp incident, much to my continued embarrassment. But perhaps the most significant change was in our daily operations. We installed special sensors calibrated specifically to human biological readings, with built-in filters to distinguish between actual emergencies and regular human activities that seem terrifying to other species. Professor Vondara, Linda approached me one day, trying not to laugh. Why does my quarters have a sign that says, "Warning, human sleep chamber, snoring may occur"? Dr. Neat insisted, I explained, my sensory appendages twitching with embarrassment. After they mistook Marcus's snoring for a malfunctioning ventilation system last month. The other human researchers who visited our station found our over-prepared protocols hilarious. They particularly enjoyed the mandatory human biological event forms we had to fill out for every unusual occurrence. You want me to file a report because I got the hiccups? Linda asked incredulously. Standard procedure now, Blip explained cheerfully. Please rate the intensity on a scale from mild thoracic spasm to potential station structural integrity risk. Even the emergency response team got in on the act. They created a special rapid response unit specifically for Deathworlder biological incidents. Though most of their calls turned out to be humans, laughing so hard at our precautions that other species mistook it for some kind of seizure. Maybe we've gone a bit overboard, I admitted to Marcus one day, watching Dr. Neat demonstrate their new human activity monitoring system, which basically consisted of them following Linda around with 17 different sensor arrays. Nah, Marcus grinned, stretching his legs carefully. Better safe than sorry. Besides, wait until someone gets a case of spring allergies. Then you'll thank yourself for all these protocols. I decided not to ask what spring allergies were. Some mysteries of human biology, I decided, were better left for future emergency response teams to discover. Looking back now, 6 cycles after the infamous leg cramp incident, I can't help but marvel at how much we've learned about our human colleagues. More importantly, how much we've learned about our own assumptions. The Galactic Science Coalition now maintains what they call the Beta 9 protocols, named after our station's memorable overreaction. My name appears in the footnotes, though I've tried unsuccessfully to have it removed. The protocols begin with a simple but profound statement. Not everything humans do is trying to kill you, even if it looks like it could. You know, Professor, Marcus said during our latest crystal formation study, I never thought my leg cramp would end up changing galactic scientific procedures. Our research station has become something of a legend, though not quite in the way I'd hoped when I first took the position. We're now the go-to facility for studying human-alien interactions, much to Dr. Neat's endless delight. Did you know, they announced during last week's staff meeting, practically vibrating with excitement, that humans sometimes make explosive sounds called sneezes that can reach velocities of... Yes, Dr. Neat, the entire staff responded in unison. We've all read your 27 papers on human respiratory events. The truth is, humans have taught us more about adaptability than any xenobiology course ever could. Here are beings who evolved on a planet that should have killed them, in conditions that would liquefy most species. And they not only survived, but thrived. They experience regular muscle spasms that can register on seismic equipment, and they treat it with the same concern we show for a mild gravitational fluctuation. It's not that we're particularly tough, Linda explained once while helping me calibrate our new human activity sensors. We're just really good at dealing with inconveniences, like horrifyingly good at it. That's when it hit me. Humans aren't remarkable because they're strong, or because they can survive conditions that would kill most species. They're remarkable because they consider these extraordinary capabilities ordinary. Last week, we had our first station-wide celebration of what humans call April Fool's Day. Marcus and Linda convinced the entire research staff that humans could temporarily defy gravity through something called jumping. It took us 3 hours to realize they were using the low-gravity environment to pull off their prank. The look on Dr. Neat's face when they realized their new research paper on human gravitational manipulation was based on a joke. Linda could barely contain her laughter. Their bioluminescent spots spelled out error 404 for almost an hour, Marcus added, wiping tears from his eyes. The Galactic Science Coalition now requires all research stations to maintain what they call a human behavior baseline, a comprehensive guide to distinguishing between actual emergencies and normal human biological functions. Our station proudly contributed the first entry. Muscle cramps, why that seismic reading might just be your human colleague's leg. As I finish this report, I can hear Marcus in the gymnasium, presumably creating more biological events that will send our sensors into confusion. Dr. Neat hovers nearby with their monitoring equipment, still hoping to capture data on these fascinating human phenomena. Linda is explaining to our new staff members that no, humans cannot actually shoot laser beams from their eyes, despite what they might have heard about death glares. And me. I've learned to appreciate the chaos humans bring to our perfectly ordered scientific world. Though I still keep my appendage hovering over the emergency protocols button, just in case. Not because I'm worried about human biological events anymore, but because with humans around, you never know what fascinating discovery might happen next. "Hey, Professor Vondara," Marcus calls out, poking his head into my office. "Ever heard of something called a sneezerp? It's when you sneeze and burp at the same time." I quickly press the button to close my office door. Some human biological events, I decide, are better left unstudied, at least until we upgrade our sensors. Again, end report. Note, this document has been filed under Xenobiological Observations, Human Division, with a special addendum. Warning, contents may cause unexpected laughter in multiple species.